In just 1 month, Ukraine has gone from holding the line to dictating the terms of the fight. Victory after victory. Not loud, sweeping breakthroughs, but calculated, methodical gains that are reshaping the battlefield in ways Russia didn't see coming. Ukrainian forces are retaking what was taken from them, and they're doing it against the Russian military that still has a massive numbers advantage. None of this is accidental. Ukraine has built itself into a genuinely dangerous fighting force, one that pairs innovation with sharp tactical thinking, and the results are showing up on the front lines, in places that are stopping Russia cold. On April 15th, the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Oleksandr Syrsky, broke it all down in a Facebook post. Russia, he noted, had launched a more aggressive wave of assaults as part of its spring offensive. His response wasn't defensive. "We must seize the strategic initiative, thus we are conducting an active defense," Syrsky wrote. Then came the number that made headlines. In March alone, Ukrainian troops reclaimed nearly 50 square kilometers of territory that Russia had been sitting on. That's 19.3 square miles, taken back through a series of sharp counteroffensive actions that caught Russian forces off guard. Putin thought he had a formula: flood unoccupied sectors with soldiers, turn empty land into gray zones, use sheer manpower to grind Ukraine down over time. It hasn't worked. Ukraine came roaring back, and it's doing so while Russia is simultaneously trying to accelerate its spring campaign. That contradiction, Russia pushing harder while losing ground, tells you everything about where things stand right now. What makes the March numbers even more significant is the context around them. These aren't gains made after a long stretch of Russian advances. The 50 square kilometers came right off the back of another strong month. By February 20th, Ukraine had already recovered around 300 square kilometers through counteroffensives in the south, roughly 115 square miles. By the end of March, Syrsky was reporting a cumulative total of about 480 square kilometers, or around 185 square miles, clawed back from Russian control. 2 consecutive months of substantial territorial recovery while Russia was supposed to be on the attack. That's not a coincidence. That's a strategy working. And then there are the casualties. March didn't just see Ukraine retake land, it saw Russia bleed at a rate it has never experienced in this war. Al Jazeera reported that Russia suffered its highest confirmed monthly casualty count of the entire conflict in March. The figure Ukraine's military put out? 35,351 Russian soldiers killed or wounded in a single month. That's a 29% increase over February's rate. Ukraine points to expanded drone production as the reason behind the spike. The full story is more layered than that, but the headline number is staggering. Russia is losing men faster than ever and losing territory at the same time. That casualty rate is also colliding with a recruitment problem that has no easy fix. Russia has set a target of 409,000 new soldiers by the end of 2026. At the current daily average of 1,120 recruits, Al Jazeera calculates Russia will fall roughly 65,000 soldiers short of that goal by year's end. Fewer soldiers cycling onto the front means thinner defenses. Thinner defenses mean more opportunities for Ukraine to find the weak points and push through them. The math is working against Moscow, and it's only going to get harder to ignore as 2026 goes on.
So Russia is dealing with record casualties, a recruitment shortfall, and Ukrainian forces retaking large chunks of its occupied territory. And all of this is unfolding during the spring offensive that was supposed to deliver Putin a decisive victory. Attacks ramped up across the entire front. Russian forces pushed toward Kostiantynivka, Liman, Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhia, and the fortified city belt in Donetsk. Heavy fighting broke out in the Oleksandrivka and Pokrovsk directions. Putin's strategy has never really changed. Overwhelm Ukrainian defenses with enough soldiers until something breaks. Basic logic says more assaults should mean more territory. Basic logic has been wrong. What's actually happening at the front is a dramatic slowdown in Russia's rate of advance. Business Insider crunched the numbers, and the comparison is brutal. In March 2025, Russian forces were covering roughly 12.9 square kilometers per day. 1 year later, that figure sits at 2.58 square kilometers, a five-fold drop. Meanwhile, Ukraine is gaining around 4.66 square kilometers daily. That's nearly double what Russia is managing during the very offensive designed to crush Ukrainian resistance. Russia is pushing harder and getting less. Ukraine is counterattacking smarter and getting more. France 24 cited an assessment from the Institute for the Study of War that drove the final point home. When tallying Ukraine's gains against Russia's losses for March, ISW concluded it was the first month in 2.5 years where Russia's net territorial gain amounted to zero. Ukraine didn't just slow Russia down, it outpaced it entirely. The month that was supposed to mark the beginning of Russia's final march ended with Ukraine running the more effective offensive. That's not just an embarrassment for Putin, it's a sign that something fundamental has changed in this war. The most obvious explanation is drones, and it's not wrong, just incomplete. Euromaidan Press reported that a staggering 96% of Russia's March casualties were caused by Ukrainian drones. Flying robots, ground robots, interceptors, FPVs. Ukraine's drone arsenal has become the dominant force on the battlefield, and it's only growing. The UK has committed to sending more than 120,000 drones to Ukraine in 2026, on top of the millions Ukraine is already manufacturing itself. The long-range drone picture has also shifted sharply. For most of this war, Russia held a clear advantage in long-range strikes, hammering Ukrainian cities and infrastructure with Shahed drones in massive volumes. March changed that. ABC News reported it was the first month of the entire war in which Ukraine launched more long-range drones at Russia than Russia managed to send at Ukraine. 7,347 Ukrainian drones against 6,462 Russian ones. Beyond the volume, Ukraine's new interceptor drones, built specifically to take out Shaheds at a fraction of the cost of traditional air defense systems, achieved close to a 90% interception rate in March. Russia is launching fewer drones than Ukraine and losing more of them. That's a complete reversal of the dynamic that defined the early years of this war. Ukraine also took the fight deep inside Russian territory. 76 targets were struck inside Russia in March, including 15 facilities tied to Russia's oil refining industry. The logic is straightforward. Weaken Russia at the source. Destroy production capacity. Cut the fuel that powers Russian operations and fills the Kremlin's war chest. The goal isn't symbolic destruction, it's operational degradation, chipping away at Russia's ability to sustain the fight from the inside out. But drones and deep strikes are tools. The strategy behind how those tools are being used is what's really driving Ukraine's gains. And that strategy runs deeper than most realize. Siersky's phrase, active defense, sounds almost passive. It isn't. It's a deliberate doctrine. Siersky put it plainly. We are countering Russian numbers with Ukrainian quality of combat operations, forcing the enemy to play by our rules and constantly postponing the deadlines for completing tasks. Ukraine's defense minister, Mikhailo Fedorov, set the tone back in January when he announced Ukraine would focus on driving Russia's irrecoverable casualty rate toward 50,000 per month. Combined with internal military reforms, that would create the conditions for Ukraine to seize the initiative. March is what seizing the initiative looks like. The approach is deliberately narrow in scope. Ukraine isn't trying to launch a sweeping counteroffensive across 1,200 kilometers of front line. It tried that in 2023 and spread itself too thin. That mistake hasn't been repeated. Instead, Ukraine is picking its spots. ISW analyst George Barros told Business Insider the gains are not accidental and not circumstantial. They're the product of months of careful preparation in specific sectors. Ukraine has been systematically degrading Russian defenses in targeted areas, creating the conditions for the counterattacks that February and March made visible. The targets Ukraine is choosing reflect an understanding of how Russia actually holds territory. Putin's infiltration strategy throughout much of 2025 involved sneaking small numbers of soldiers into unoccupied zones and claiming those areas as Russian-controlled. That gave Russia the appearance of momentum without the substance. Ukraine has identified exactly those kinds of tenuous footholds and is going after them. Where Russia is thin, Ukraine hits. While doing that, it holds firm in the sectors Russia actually wants, Donetsk being the clearest example, inflicting mass casualties on attacking Russian forces and forcing Putin to redeploy troops before he's ready. Every unplanned redeployment creates another gap somewhere else. Ukraine finds those gaps and uses them. Oleksandrivka and Dnipropetrovsk are two of the sectors where this has played out. In Dnipropetrovsk, Ukraine's pressure is specifically aimed at denying Russia the buffer zone it was trying to construct to shield its forces in Donetsk. Push Russia back there, and the Donetsk campaign gets harder. Pull Russian soldiers south to respond, and the Donetsk lines thin. Either outcome works in Ukraine's favor. The same logic showed up in Kupiansk back in December, when Ukraine dismantled a Russian attempt to claim that city, both stopping a tactical advance and sending a signal ahead of any future peace talks. Ukraine's Delta system is a key part of what makes this coordination possible. It's a cloud-based battlefield management platform that aggregates real-time data from drones, sensors, and field units, feeding commanders a live picture of the front. Decisions that used to take hours can happen in minutes. Ukraine is operating at a tempo Russia can't match. The structural changes inside Ukraine's military are reinforcing the tactical ones. Ukraine is transitioning to a core-based command structure, which tightens coordination between units and makes operational planning more coherent. A new tier of mid-range drones has also entered the picture, longer-ranged than the FPV drones that dominate close-range combat, but cheaper than the strategic long-range platforms Ukraine uses for deep strikes. These mid-range drones are expanding Ukraine's ability to hit targets in occupied Donetsk that were previously out of reach. They're going after ammunition depots, Shahed storage facilities, and troop concentrations, exactly the kind of targets that degrade Russia's offensive punch before the fighting even starts. That capability was made possible by a campaign that's been running quietly for nearly a year. Between June 2025 and March 2026, Ukraine conducted 492 strikes against Russian air defense systems. Those strikes didn't just destroy hardware, they punched holes in the protective layer that Russia had built over its near-rear infrastructure. With those air defenses gone, Ukraine can now run drones through the corridors that opened up, hitting logistics and supply lines that were previously shielded. It's a layered approach. Degrade the defenses, open the corridors, strike the supply chain, and watch Russian frontline units arrive underprepared. And then there are the surprises. The Kiev Post reported that Ukraine is now using underground routes to move troops and military equipment, tunnel networks that Ukraine has spent months building in the kill zones it has created. Russia didn't see that coming. That's precisely the point. Speed and the ability to surprise have always been Ukraine's advantages over a Russian military that defaults to mass and repetition. Ukraine is embedding research and development directly into its fighting units, per the Center for Strategic and International Studies, and has built a stronger training pipeline for air defense operators. Every layer of the military is getting sharper. Syrskyi himself has described a military that conducts monthly assessments of its own combat operations, reviewing what worked, what didn't, and how coordination at every level can be improved. Ukraine is always looking for the next edge. Russia, by contrast, is fighting 2026 with the same attritional playbook it brought to 2022. The drone program is newer, but the underlying strategy, push, absorb losses, push again, hasn't changed. And the results are starting to reflect that rigidity. When Ukraine retakes 50 square kilometers of territory, the land itself matters, but what it represents matters more. These gains are the product of a military that learned from failure, reformed its structure, invested in technology, and developed the strategic discipline to pick its fights carefully. Putin's invasion, as brutal as it has been, has had the unintended effect of forcing Ukraine to become one of the more capable fighting forces in the world. The spring of 2026 was supposed to be Russia's moment, the campaign that finally broke Ukrainian resistance and set up a Russian endgame. Instead, it has produced the first month in 2.5 years where Russia gained nothing on net. Ukraine has the momentum, the bite back is underway, and as Russia's recruitment falls short, its casualties mount, and its advances stall, the window for a Russian military solution is narrowing. Putin's spring offensive was meant to be the beginning of the end for Ukraine. It's starting to look like something else entirely.